Hello, my name is Daniel. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy real, heartbreaking cheating stories from Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment to share your thoughts. It really means a lot to me. This is one of those stories that creeps into your chest and stays there. A story of betrayal, shock, and quiet unraveling. It starts with a man named Eli Turner, 41, whose world fell apart one ordinary evening in the quiet suburbs of Hillsboro, Oregon. The radio was murmuring some forgettable pop tune as Eli turned onto Ashfield Drive, the street he'd driven down nearly every evening for the last 14 years. At 6:47 p.m. sharp, his mind usually shifted out of work mode, the tension of his job at the shipping warehouse giving way to the soft promise of home. His shoulders would loosen. His jaw would release. The familiarity of the route had always meant comfort. But not tonight. Tonight, red and blue lights sliced across the fading sky like accusations. Their reflections flickered across neatly trimmed lawns and white picket fences like something out of a nightmare. Patrol cars lined the curb like soldiers. Their radios cracked and hissed with clipped code. An ambulance stood in the middle of the street, its rear doors wide open. Paramedics worked in frantic silence around a man lying on a stretcher. Eli's house, his and Mara's, was the center of it all. Bright yellow tape fluttered in the breeze like some cruel joke, wrapped around the property where he'd raised his daughter, where he'd spent weekends fixing gutters and planting daffodils. A police officer stood at the gate, his stance rigid, his eyes unreadable. On the curb, where Eli usually parked when coming home late, a luxury car blazed in orange flames. Black smoke curled skyward as firefighters fought to extinguish the fire. Eli pulled into the driveway automatically. His body remembered the motion, but his brain struggled to catch up. This couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake. A neighbor's accident, maybe, or something random. Mara would be inside, peeking through the blinds, frightened but safe. The officer at the gate stepped forward. "Sir, you need to stay behind the tape." "I live here," Eli said, already reaching for his ID. "Eli Turner. This is my house. Is my wife okay?" The officer studied the license a little too long before nodding. "She's inside. Detective Alvarez will want to speak with you." He led Eli through the barrier. As they passed, Eli saw the man being loaded into the ambulance. His suit, once expensive and sharp, was shredded. Blood stained his face. He was unconscious. Eli didn't recognize him. Detective Alvarez appeared beside him. She looked worn, mid-40s maybe, with a clipboard under her arm and an expression that weighed everything she saw. "Do you know this individual, Mr. Turner?" she asked. Eli shook his head. "No, I've never seen him in my life." "What happened here?" he asked. But she didn't answer that. "Where were you this evening, sir?" The question hit him sideways. "I was at work. I managed the prep crew at Summit Freight. I left at 6:30, same as always. There are cameras, time logs, people who can vouch." She jotted that down, eyes never leaving him. "We'll need to verify all of that." Then came the next blow. "Your wife said this man was a friend who stopped by unexpectedly. Says he was attacked in your driveway and his car was set on fire. Any idea who might want to do something like that?" Eli's stomach dropped. Mara? Friends? She didn't do unexpected. In 12 years, he'd never seen a visitor drop by unannounced. She planned everything to the hour: meals, cleaning, even their intimacy. There had to be a mistake. "Mara doesn't have friends over without warning," he said softly. "She likes to prep the house, cook, clean. Surprises stress her out." Alvarez raised an eyebrow. "So this would be unusual behavior?" "Extremely." "And no one with a grudge against you? Someone who might want to send a message?" He blinked. The suggestion hung in the air. They thought he'd done this. They thought he'd come home and beaten a man in his driveway, torched a car. The sheer absurdity of it made him want to laugh, but Alvarez's face was unreadable. "I've got 20 witnesses who can verify my whereabouts from 2 to 6:30, Eli said quietly. "Time cards, cameras. We'll check." He drew a shaky breath. "Can I see my wife?" Alvarez hesitated, then gave a small nod. "She's inside. She's shaken. Says she's never seen anything like this." The house no longer felt like home. Police were cataloging the living room. Flash blobs popped, voices murmured, everything smelled like fire. Mara sat on the couch in one of my flannel throws. Her makeup was smeared. Her hands shook as she cradled a coffee cup. When she looked up and saw me, the tears came hard. "Eli, oh God, it was awful," I said beside her out of instinct, but paused. Something in the way she looked at me didn't feel right. Not fear, not shock. Guilt. "Who was he, Mara?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't believe the answer. She blinked fast, then closed her lips again. Her eyes darted toward the window where the skeleton of the burnt BMW still sat under the glow of the street lamp. "Daniels, I think," she said. "What gym?" I pressed. "What?" "You've been going to CalFit for 3 years. I've picked you up there after work plenty of times. Which trainer is he? What class does he teach?" She looked like a dam ready to break. The carefully rehearsed story she'd told the police was already unraveling. "He's not a trainer. He's just a member." "Mara," I said, leaning forward, quiet but firm, "I've seen the credit card statements. You haven't been to that gym in over 6 months." The silence that followed felt like it would swallow the room whole. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once, then nothing. The refrigerator hummed in the background. Her breathing turned rapid, shallow, like she was trying not to hyperventilate. "I can explain," she whispered. "Can you?" I said. "Because I've been trying to make sense of all this. A man I've never met shows up in our driveway wearing a suit that costs more than our mortgage payment and gets beaten half to death. His car is set on fire, and I'm the police suspect. All while you're in here telling them you barely know the guy." Her voice cracked into a sob. "I didn't see who did it. I swear. I was inside. I heard shouting, then glass breaking. I looked out and Daniel was just lying there, and the car—" Her breath hitched. "It was already burning." "I called 911 right away." "What was he doing here?" I asked. My voice low, exhausted. She wrapped her arms around herself and began rocking slightly. "He wanted to talk about personal things." And there it was. The truth wasn't in what she said. It was in everything she didn't. The way her eyes refused to meet mine. The guilt dragging her shoulders downward. My wife, the woman I'd trusted more than anyone, had become a stranger right in front of me. "How long?" I asked. "Eli, please," she started. "How long have you been sleeping with him?" I pressed. Her defenses crumbled. The tears flowed openly now, freely. 6 months, but it didn't mean anything. I was lonely. You're always working late, and he made me feel—" "Get out," I said, standing slowly, each word etched with finality. "Pack what you need for the night. You're sleeping in the guest room." "Eli, no, we can fix this. I made a mistake, but I love you. I choose you. Daniel was just—" "Just what? A 6-month mistake? One that nearly got me arrested? One that set fire to everything we built?" She reached for me, grasping at the sleeve of my flannel shirt. "Please, I'm so sorry. I'll never see him again. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked down at her hands, the same hands that had once vowed to hold only mine. The same hands that, at some point tonight, had slipped off her wedding ring. The indentation still fresh, the tan line glaring. I'm calling Patricia Emmons in the morning, I said. She wrote our prenup, and I'm enforcing every word. You signed it, Mara. Infidelity voids everything. Spousal support, asset division, all of it. Her face lost all color. You're not serious. I've never been more serious. She stood there frozen for a moment, then turned and walked upstairs in silence. I stayed in the living room, staring at the scorched outline of what used to be a luxury car. 20 minutes later, she returned with a pillow and an overnight bag, stopping at the guest room door with swollen eyes. I didn't mean for this to happen. But it did, and now we live with the consequences. The guest room door clicked shut. Minutes later, I heard her sobbing, low, guttural cries that tore through the stillness. I walked upstairs, past that door, into the room we once shared. The scent of her perfume clung to the pillows. For the first time in years, I had the entire bed to myself. And I'd never felt so completely alone. Patricia adjusted her glasses and read aloud, her voice steady but clinical. Adultery Clause, Section 4. In the event that either party engages in extramarital sexual relations, the offending party forfeits all rights to spousal support, marital property division, and shared assets acquired during the marriage. She looked up from the file, her eyes searching mine. Do you have proof, Eli? Without saying a word, I slid a flash drive across her polished desk. Police report from Tuesday night, a statement from Mara admitting to a 6-month affair, credit card transactions, hotels, dinners, gifts I never saw. She plugged it in, reviewing the files in silence. She scribbled notes in neat lines on a yellow legal pad. I watched her expression shift as she clicked through each document, each line of damning evidence. Her mouth tightened at Mara's official statement. Her head shook slightly at the receipts. This is textbook, she said, closing the laptop. She paused, then leaned forward. Eli, I have to ask, did you have anything to do with what happened to this man? I was at work from 2 to 6:30 p.m. that day. Security footage, time cards, and 8 witnesses all say the same. The police have cleared me. Good, she said, sitting back. Because if anything even hinted at premeditated violence, it would complicate things, especially if it looked like retaliation. I nodded. She looked at me for a long moment. Are you sure you want to go through with this? No counseling, no second chances? The question felt so absurd I almost laughed. She lied to my face for 6 months, brought him into our home, into our bed. She dragged me into a police investigation like I was some criminal. What exactly am I reconciling with? Some people forgive, she said with a shrug. Some people are fools. Patricia offered a grim smile. Fair enough. I'll file the papers this afternoon. Per the agreement, she has 7 days to vacate the home, 30 days to get a lawyer. She keeps only what's in her name, her car, her clothes, and any personal belongings. Everything else, house, savings, investments, remains yours. How long until it's final? 6 to 8 weeks unless she contests it, but given the strength of the prenup and the clarity of the evidence, I doubt any competent lawyer would recommend that. I left her office feeling lighter. Not happy, just empty in a way that felt clean. The sun looked a little brighter. The traffic on the drive home didn't feel quite so hostile. Even the elevator music in my building sounded less hollow. When I stepped through the front door, Mara was already waiting for me in the kitchen. She had done her makeup, her hair curled into soft waves, and she wore the blue dress I'd once complimented years ago, the one that I'd said made her eyes stand out. It didn't work this time. "I made a reservation for Romano's," she said with a hopeful smile. 7:30. I thought, maybe we could talk. I placed my briefcase on the counter, loosening my tie. "Cancel it." Her smile faltered. "Eli, please, I know you're upset, but we can work through this. I even called Dr. Ethan. She's got a slot open next week." "Mara, enough." I hadn't served the papers yet. They were still tucked in my briefcase, signed, notarized, ready to go. But seeing her there, putting on this performance like everything could just go back to normal, made me feel something close to pity. "You need to call a lawyer," I said quietly. "Today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today." The color drained from her face. "What?" "I filed this morning. You'll be served tomorrow." She stared at me stunned. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the tile. The coffee spread slowly across the floor like something bleeding out. "You can't be serious," she whispered. "I made the same decision every day for half a year," I said. "Now I'm making mine." Her eyes welled up again, but the tears felt different this time. Sharper. Calculated. "Fine," she snapped. "Divorce me, but you can't just toss me out like garbage. I gave you everything, the best years of my life." "You gave me 12 years of lies," I said coldly. "And according to our agreement, that means you get nothing." Her face changed instantly. The vulnerability disappeared. Her jaw tightened, her fists clenched. "You bastard! You planned this!" "No," I said. "I planned for the chance that you might be exactly who you've proven yourself to be." She shoved her chair back, its legs shrieking across the floor. "I'll fight this. No judge is going to uphold that ridiculous prenup." "Patricia Emmons disagrees." I watched the realization dawn in her eyes. She knew the name. Everyone in our social circle did. Mara stepped back toward the stairs, her arms crossed. "I need time to think." "You've got 7 days to move out," I said. "Think all you want." She paused at the bottom step, looking over her shoulder. "What if they arrest you? The police investigation?" "They won't," I said simply. "My alibi is solid." She opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. "I didn't hurt your boyfriend, Mara, but I'm done letting his mess spill into my life." She turned without another word and walked up the stairs. An hour later, I heard her whispering into the phone, probably calling her sister, maybe her mother, maybe both. She would spin it, turn herself into the victim. She always did. Let her. I ate cold Chinese food at the kitchen table alone, reading over Patricia's preliminary inventory. My house, my savings, my life. She'd signed the papers 12 years ago out of eagerness. Now they would be her undoing. And for the first time in years, I slept in peace. The interview room at the Hillsborough Police Department was everything you'd expect. Flickering fluorescent lights, a battered metal table, chairs with cracked vinyl that probably hadn't been uncomfortable since the 1980s. Detective Alvarez sat across from me, her eyes tired but focused, a thick folder resting on the table between us. For the third time in 4 days, she walked me through every detail of Tuesday evening. "You left work at 6:30 p.m.?" she asked, scanning her notes. "Correct," I replied. "Your supervisor confirms it. Security footage shows you badging out at 6:32. "That's right." "Drive straight home?" "Same route I always take," I said, keeping my voice steady. She flipped through a few more pages. "We've verified your work attendance, spoken to your team, reviewed the footage. Everything checks out." I sat still, the same calm expression on my face I'd worn since this all began. I hope that helps clear things up. She closed the file slowly. It does. You're no longer a person of interest in Mr. Daniel's assault. There was a pause. A weight I didn't know I'd been carrying lifted ever so slightly from my chest. That's good to hear, I said quietly. Any leads on who did it? I asked. Detective Alvarez shut off the tape recorder, her expression unreadable. Between you and me, Mr. Turner, crimes like this usually fall into two categories: random violence, which this clearly wasn't, or personal disputes. She let that sit there in the space between us. Given that Mr. Daniels was visiting your wife, and someone beat him unconscious in your driveway, you think it was about Mara? I said, not even asking, just finishing her thought. I think your wife hasn't been completely honest about her relationship with him, she replied. Then, with a small nod, she pushed back from the table. But that's not your problem anymore, is it? I could hear the shift in her voice, the way people talk when they know the personal part of your story, the court filings, the lawyer's name. Word travels fast in a place like Hillsborough, especially when Patricia Emmons is involved. No, I said softly, it's not my problem anymore. Walking out of that station felt like crawling out of a dark tunnel. The afternoon sun hit my face like a truth I'd been avoiding. Warm, indifferent. The world kept turning with or without me. The investigation was closed, at least for me. And Mara's mess? That was no longer my burden to carry. Still, as I drove through town, my mind drifted not to the version I'd told Alvarez, but to what actually happened that night. What really happened. I had left work at 6:30, just as I'd said. But I hadn't gone straight home. I'd taken a detour first, one I'd taken more than once over the past month. Every time I'd spotted that sleek black BMW in my driveway during lunch breaks, I felt something harden inside me. It had happened 3 times, always the same spot, always the same uneasy feeling. That Tuesday, I passed the house around 5:55 p.m. There it was again, his car, right in front of my home, like it belonged there. I parked 4 blocks away, cutting the engine in silence. I walked back, staying in the shadows, and let myself in through the basement door. The house sounded wrong. I heard Mara laughing, that soft, breathy laugh I hadn't heard in years, and then a man's voice, relaxed, confident, familiar in a way that made my stomach turn. I waited down there, alone with my thoughts in the slow boil of betrayal, listening as they moved around upstairs. I imagined them on our couch, drinking from my scotch, sitting in my chair, touching everything I used to consider sacred. I watched him leave at 7:15, confident, smiling, checking his phone without a care in the world, like he hadn't just violated my marriage, like he wasn't the reason my life was on fire. I followed him outside. The baseball bat in my hand felt solid, real. I wore a ski mask pulled from the winter gearbox, just enough to turn me into a question instead of a man. He didn't even see me until it was too late. The first hit cracked his ribs. The second broke something in his shoulder. I didn't go too far. I knew where to stop. Pain, not death. Consequences, not closure. The gasoline came from the mower, the matchbook from our emergency drawer. The fire caught fast. Leather burns hotter than you'd think. Afterwards, I stripped in the basement, washed, changed, hid everything in the workshop, drove around the block once slowly, windows down, like nothing had happened. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 6:47 p.m., just as the chaos was beginning. And I played my part. Shock, concern, confusion. The innocent husband coming home to disaster. It had been the performance of my life. Now, standing in that same driveway, the BMW was gone, towed away days ago. All that remained was a black stain on the pavement. Mara's car was missing too. She'd been staying with her sister since the divorce papers were served. The house felt still, finally, like it had been mine all along and I was just now realizing it. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and sat in the leather chair she always hated. From the window, I could see Mrs. Patterson outside pruning her roses. I wondered what version of the story she believed. Let her believe what she wanted. My phone buzzed, a message from Mara. "Please call me. We need to talk about the house." I deleted it. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the floor. In a few hours, I'd fall asleep alone, in peace. No whispers in the dark, no thermostat arguments, no pretending to be okay. Tomorrow, I'd wake up to a life that was finally mine, a life that cost me everything I used to believe in. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I stood alone in the kitchen of the house Mara and I once shared. The early light crept through the blinds, casting long, familiar shadows across the tile. I stirred a single cup of coffee, listening to the local news in the background. The weather forecast promised sunshine and mild temperatures, perfect for the golf game I had scheduled with Mike from work. Mara had moved out the day before, taking only what the prenup allowed: her car, a few boxes of clothes, and the bitter weight of what she'd lost. The house felt cavernous without her, but also still, peaceful. The kind of silence that follows a long, exhausting storm. The newscaster mentioned that Daniel had been released from the hospital, a walking cast, fractured ribs, and months of recovery ahead. The police officially closed the investigation, citing a lack of suspects. They called it a possible robbery gone wrong. I took a sip of coffee and let the life sit quietly in the back of my throat. At 9, Mike picked me up. We spent the morning at Cedar Ridge Golf Club, a membership I'd kept despite Mara always calling it frivolous. Now it felt like a small piece of foresight. As we walked up to the 10th tee, Mike glanced over. "You seem different, lighter." 12 years of wait will do that, I said. "Any regrets?" I lined up my shot and thought about it. About the divorce? No. About waiting this long? Yeah. The ball soared clean off the tee, a perfect arc into a blue sky that felt like it finally belonged to me. At lunch, old acquaintances stopped by our table to offer both condolences and quiet congratulations. Word had spread about the affair, the prenup, the outcome. In our circle, infidelity wasn't just gossip, it was exile. Mike set down his drink. "I heard she's living with her parents while she looks for a place." "My prenup gave her 60 days, I replied. "Rough." "No, that's consequences." That afternoon, I returned to a house that now felt completely mine. No arguments over thermostat settings, no compromises on furniture, no tension humming beneath the surface. I ate what I wanted, watched what I wanted, moved through the space freely. I'd heard through mutual friends that Mara was struggling, living at her parents' place at 38, trying to rebuild from nothing. Her affair had cost her more than she had expected. Daniel had reportedly ended things right after he got out of the hospital. Getting nearly beaten to death had apparently made him reevaluate the appeal of married women. That night, I cooked myself a quiet dinner. Steak, the way I liked it, wine from the bottle she used to call too expensive, and dessert without sharing. I ate slowly, letting the silence stretch around me like a blanket. When my phone rang and her name flashed on the screen, I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear it. I already knew it would be tears, apologies, and desperate bargaining. I deleted it. At 10, I climbed into the king-size bed. My bed now. No discussions about who stole the covers, no cold shoulder, just me, the quiet, and a future that finally felt real. Infidelity doesn't just break trust, it breaks identity. Eli's story, like many others, reminds us that betrayal doesn't happen all at once. It starts with small cracks, ignored intuition, and slowly shifting boundaries. By the time the truth comes out, the damage often runs deeper than we can measure. If you're in a relationship where you feel uncertain, unheard, or consistently gaslit, take notice. Healthy partnerships are built on openness, mutual respect, and shared values. If something feels off, investigate, not with suspicion, but with self-protection. Keep records, ask questions, protect yourself emotionally and financially, especially in long-term commitments. Divorce isn't always failure, it can be survival. And justice isn't always about revenge. Sometimes it's about reclaiming your peace and refusing to carry someone else's guilt. Choose yourself, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts.